Hello, me lovelies. Well, it's all kicking off, isn't it, in the podcast wars between Shaun Attwood and James English. This is just so sad. It's so sad. The two of them could have been really riding high on success, and this has gone and happened. But I felt compelled to do this video because I'm not going to hold back. I tried to be like a peacemaker between James and Shaun. Give Shaun his due, he was willing to be a peacemaker with James, but James just wouldn't even respond. He's on his high horse, he's looking down at everybody else. He doesn't respond to the peasants. But I'll go into that in a minute. Not quite true, you don't, do you, James? You do a lot in the background to get a situation heated up, and then you go running away, claiming that you don't respond to drama. Anyway, well, he just say it in that accent, does he now? So I'm going to be as fair as I can here, but it's difficult because I do have respect for the two of these people as professional people podcasters. They're the two best ones out there. They are the two best ones out there. They're way up there with, the finest. So it's horrible having to do this, but let's go for it anyway. And be jumping from one to the other. Don't want to stick with one pace and say, like, go on about Shaw, then go on about James. I want to sort of like mix it up because then it won't look like I'm just picking on one. Anyway, what happened was, this is what kicked this latest edition off. Shaun went on Decker Hegge's original All or Nothing podcast to make up with Mr. Trouble with a capital T, Darren G. There's a little rhyme for you, right? Forget choose life, not a knife. Darren G, Trouble with a capital T, right, was on there. And that's what it's supposed to be, but of course, Darren, given a platform, decides to start slating everyone, and he said some nasty things about James English, which James English didn't like. And I don't blame James English not liking him, but at the same time, we've got to remember James wasn't arguing or complaining when Mr. Trouble was on his podcast slating off Shaun and saying horrendous things about Shaun, and apparently has been a person of a homosexual nature, allegedly, is something bad. And I'll get onto this about James and his he does have homophobia in there, but that's what kicked it all off. James said some things that were valid. Shaun said some things that were valid. The two of them said things that they shouldn't have said. But as I say, I was trying to act as I say, tried to get some mediation there, and James wasn't having any of it. Now, what did it mean by James stays up then runs away? Well, about a year ago, God knows, well over a year ago now, I used to follow James when he was at about 75,000 followers. And suddenly he blocked me from everything, his YouTube channel. And so I said, what's wrong? Well, I got the most vile, disgusting messages in response. Threats, he was going to come down and do me. I was an old this, that and the other. An old, not safe around children, but he said another way, an old this business. Very, very offensive, and a lot of hate speech in there. Now he's lucky, and I told him he was lucky. I could have taken that right and taken it to Police Scotland, and he would have been getting an early morning call over there. Or I could have just gone to one of the Scottish press and handed them over to them and said, here we are, this is what James English talks like behind the scenes, the reformed character. Oh, they were nasty. They were very nasty. Well, something happened. And we started talking again, though he still got me blocked. And it was over Oh, what's her name? Barbara O'Hare. Barbara O'Hare wanted to contact me, and that's how we started talking again. And but it never, never amounts to anything great. But another thing I'll say, James, which is nasty that you do, you go telling tales out of school. If someone tells you something in private, you run back to the person and tell them what's been said. And I know that for a fact because someone I spoke to you about told me, James English has told me what you were saying in private about me. So don't tell him anything in private, people, because he goes. And this is what I mean when he's sitting there last night saying he doesn't respond to such, he wouldn't load himself to respond to such drama. No, what he does behind the scenes is he does that and then runs away when he's challenged over it publicly. But now to move on to Shaun, because I don't want to be just concentrating on James now. Get on to things that I agree with James, with what he said. Shaun, when he went on that podcast with Darren G, Shaun shouldn't have started bringing James into it like that. No in the crown, because that was just going to needle Darren into Slate James. That's all that was going to happen. It was defo that was going to happen. So anyway, that's a fault. And that's what... But why Shaun did his response video was he's fuming at the allegations that are being made about him. Some what James said, you could validate it, but others are just nasty gossip. And let's get one thing out of the way, right? In my last video, which I'll put a link to, I said, not my last video, the video beforehand, I'll put a link to it anyway, the one where I'm actually going on about the Decca Heggie podcast. I said that rumours were going rife that the Scottish Pussycat podcast was created by and funded by James English to bring Shaun down. What does James English do in his video last night? Goes and tells people to follow this Scottish Pussycat. You couldn't get more of a confirmation that James is behind this. Because as I said in my last one, that account suddenly was created and came up just as Daddy Gate broke, and all the data was flying around, and James was getting this one to come on, slag him off. James was doing this, James was doing that. So he's behind it. And I tried to say to James last night, though you don't get a reply, and this is what I mean, he does that, then runs away. Nasty for you to do that, James, because you know that podcaster is well behind and supports vile, disgusting hate speech towards me and a gay YouTuber, and absolutely disgusting, and you're supporting him when he supports that. But again, I've never been in any doubt, James, that you do have a homophobic element here, a very homophobic. I got those emails, I know what they said. I've still got them. I've never shown them to Shaun, I've never shown them to anyone, but I've still got them, right? Absolutely vile what you were saying in there. And this, what you said, which is backed up by what James said over when he first met Shaun. Oh, I thought he was gay, thought he was weird and all this business. Why would his being gay be weird? And people forget this about Shaun Attwood, right? I used to make this mistake. I'd be wondering, he has strange affects, his eyes and the way he gains and doing all this business. It was only later on I realised something. Wait a minute, he's struggling with mental health issues here. He's got post-traumatic stress disorder from even before he was put in prison, because he was beaten up badly as a teenager. And he was very nervous, full of anxiety. And you see him with his hands in positions like that. That's someone that's trying to keep the anxiety contained. So that's why he comes out with these strange faces. Now, let's get on to what I don't agree with what Shaun was saying in his podcast, and which worried me. What he was saying is his response to James's attack on him. Look, right, I've had this out with Shaun, but he's an adult. I can't force him to do something. Yeah, I can't do it. Callie Diamond, he wants to be as well away from here as he can be. I've said this before to Shaun, and he doesn't listen. You know, he's got a strange, what would you call it? He doesn't pick the most ideal women to go into a relationship with. So, when you look at his past, you know, he married a porn star, didn't he? A lesbian porn star. They had a threesome on the marriage night. He's got very, how can we call it, exotic tastes, should we call it that? Exotic tastes. But it doesn't always make for a happy life being involved. Now, this is where I agree with James, right? There was a lot of questionable things going on there. A lot of questionable things. Get this straight out the way, is Callie Diamond a poor trafficked victim, brain damaged trafficked victim who was, you know, abused by Shaun? No, she isn't. She's no more autistic than I am, and I've said before, I have high functioning Asperger's, and she's as bright as I can be, I can assure you. And she's very devious. She can lie through her teeth at the drop of a hat. And she said herself she enjoys being a sex worker, and she's never going to give up being a sex worker. Now, this is where I draw issue with what Shaun was saying. It wasn't that people, Shaun, were hating on Callie Diamond because she was a sex worker. It was because the two of you kept that quiet when you were raising money for her. It was get her life back on track and get her son back with her. I've said this before, she has no chance of getting her son back, so that was bogus. And also, right, you should have been honest and said she's still on the game. You didn't say that. It was made out that she was going to leave that profession. That's what it was made to sound like. So that's why people accuse this GoFundMe of being a fraud. That's why they say it. You've got to face up to this, Shaun. It wasn't done right. And you weren't blasting out there that you were in a relationship with her. You know, when you've got a sex worker who wants to be a sex worker, she's not, no one's pressuring Callie Diamond to be a sex worker, she said that. She's enjoying every minute of it, right? You pay for it. If you want to have sex with them, you pay for the sex. You don't then go into a relationship with them when they're still a working girl. Or most men, the vast majority of men wouldn't do that. But Callie Diamond actually wants that life. Other people are trapped in it. She wants it. That's the big difference. And that's why I wouldn't give her respect, because there's other ways for women to make an honest living without having to go into that industry. But some people are saying, oh, locked into it, so I'm not saying I'm disrespecting her because she's a sex worker, and people weren't disrespecting her because she's a sex worker. They were disrespecting her because they felt conned, and they had the right to feel conned. Anyway, let's go back on to James now. Just to quickly add here, because I forgot to put it in, when James is going on about Shaun abused a poor brain damaged woman or mentally ill woman like Callie Diamond, just let's get it right here, James. We want to remember what you did with Kerry Katona. Now, you ridiculed, made a mockery of Kerry Katona and said you used it just to get on in your celebrity status, right? Kerry Katona is well known to have mental health issues, anxiety, PTSD, lots, and you used her. So before you start throwing stones at Shaun, you want to remember what you've done in the past, which you try to forget now. So just thought I'd add that bit in. Now, this issue over Darren, Mr. Trouble, Darren G, Trouble with a capital T, right? Yeah, you should feel sore by that. It was terrible what happened. But what you've got to remember is also James didn't tell us that. He knew at the time when he was promoting Darren G. Oh, we thought you could see the euros and pound signs clinging in James's eyes, like you can in Decker Heggies now. Whoa, ka-ching, ka-ching. We've got the clickbait king, Darren G, within our grasps. You know, you didn't tell us he was still on drugs, which I think was obvious to people. You didn't tell us that you knew about what he was getting up to, his wife and well, his partner and his mother and all this. So you weren't being honest either, right? It's not just Shaun that wasn't being honest about Carly. You weren't being honest about what was going on there and presenting him as someone that had changed his life. Now, this Darren slating Shaun off on that show. Did you lead her into him? Well, you didn't stop him and you put it up there. So you knew what effect that would have, and you have been going around behind the scenes telling people. And as I say, you're involved with that Scottish pussycat, no doubt about that now. You're involved with that, so you have been stirring things up. You're not as innocent as you're making out. Liverpool. You get a big, well, I'm taking it that you were joking there when you said you get a huge reception when you come to Liverpool. News to me, no one knows who you are up down here. Now, Shaun Attwood as well. You say to the majority of people who's Shaun Attwood, who? They won't know who you're talking about. Say Darren G, a lot more will know. And I assure you, he's not thought of as being a great inspiration by a lot of people in Liverpool. He has to, or what? It's duck and dive when he comes to Liverpool. There's a lot of people that don't like him. And that's say they don't see him as a gangster. They see him as a thug. And they don't see him as someone that's an inspiration. Right? Still trying to work out this great work, all the way he's turned his life around. And I agree with James like that, about that. What has he done? What has he done? He's done absolutely nothing. Only run around causing absolutely havoc. But all that I'll say, James, is, yeah, you're right, and this is nothing that James is right about. Shaun has, for the majority of it, acted in a way that has ruined his own reputation or sullied his own reputation. You're right, I agree with you there. Because I say, Shaun, but he made a mistake. And that's what happened. And sadly, people who you seem to be having invested interest in, like the Scottish Pussycat, took that and ran with it. I made sure it was made a big issue. Instead of saying, look, let's get this all sorted out. Let's get this sorted out. Because it's just an awful shame. It is. It's an awful shame the way it's gone. But I'll say that in Shaun's defence, he is the one that is reaching out, trying to solve this. But he's just come to the end of his tether. Remember, when people are going on about bringing Shaun down, destroying Shaun and all this business, they forget. It's easy to see YouTube channels being something disposable, isn't it? Like an email account or a Twitter account. No, when you get to a YouTuber as large as and successful as Shaun and James English, that's a living. That's a business. It's a business that earns money. And people are getting paid a wage from that. They're employing people. The two of them. That's what happens. So when you say, oh, it's huge, you're talking about a business has been destroyed. And you're talking about people who were relying on that business for an income to feed themselves and their family and not have to claim benefits. That's gone. Bear that in mind, that's gone. That's why I never bought into this bring Shaun Attwood down. As I say, all that I wanted was because of the material that was on his channel, out of schools. And this is another thing I've just remembered that I should have said. You know, James, when you're going on about the people he's had on, like Wilfred Wong, totally agree with you. Wilfred Wong, he should never have had on. Why do you think I first fell out with Shaun? I fell out over him before I even got into the studio and was interviewed by him. I remember someone that could confirm that is what was his name? Flo Destroyer, fellow Scotsman, floated through. You can confirm that. I said, I'm not happy with this. I said, I'm not happy. Because around the same time, Shaun put up a video interviewing John Wedger, and I thought, trouble, trouble, trouble. I knew what John Wedger was up to, and I knew what he was doing behind the scenes. And I know he's a very dangerous man, disturbed man in my mind, disillusioned man. And of course, then one came in. Then what happens? Janice Archer comes in, all very dangerous people to have around. And you only have to hear that, what Janice Archer's saying about saving children or kidnapping them. You work it out for yourself. So I could see trouble coming. Shaun bought right into that. Does he still buy into it? I think he does still buy into it. It's just not putting it on this channel anymore. As I say, if that's happening, I can tell you one way it's going to go. You don't have to work to bring Shaun down. If he carries on associating himself with people like that, he's going to be brought down anyway. Make no doubts about it. The police will be at his door again, and it will be finito. It will be over for Shaun. Because you mix with the likes of Archer, Wong and Wedger, you're heading for trouble. No doubts about it. So, I said this in the past, you don't have to work that hard. But hopefully Shaun will see sense. But you know, it's like banging your head on a brick wall with Shaun. He doesn't listen, or he very rarely listens. Didn't Wildman say, someone said the other day, Wildman said that Shaun flies too high to the sun. Sorry about that, doggy's getting ready to start interrupting me. Yeah, he's wanting attention, so he starts coughing, hocking, and then barking. Anyway, yeah. Icarus and Daedalus, flying too high to the sun. And I hope that he learns to be the businessman. It's alright being a campaigner, right, but sometimes you've got to think, well, I've got to get the pound, shilling and pence into my account to be able to survive and live. Anyway, my lovelies, I'll leave it at that. If I've offended anyone, tough, right? But I think I'm only doing it out of the hope, the real hope that one day these two, come on James, just reach out, come on. Reach out. You can both resolve this, you can. What's happened has happened. Leave it in the past. Just getting messy. So I'll leave it at that, my lovelies. Bye bye for now.